But all right, so let's get started here. Just a quick introduction for me. I'm a person has been working within Code Savvy now for almost 10 years. Seems like time has flown by. I originally started to work through the Coder Dojo programs, and now a lot of our things are now through Code Explorer. Everybody should have access to a website here, and this is where we put a lot of our content, and I'll put that in the chat for the group here, and that is our the microsite for ChatGPT for teachers. And this has a couple things you should just know about it. First of all, there's a search bar here. So if you're looking for a specific lesson plan, you can go into the search and type in a topic. There's a navigation, and these little things are hard to see there, things that open and close. Let me demonstrate that so you can see that. So if we're looking at the basic concepts, you have to go here. If you're looking at some basic prompts or some of the future topics, and then we also have all of the slides are here, so you should be able to download those if you want to see them. And then this is also what we call a public GitHub repository. So you can see all of the content here and all the things. You can download this. You can go back up to the Coder Dojo TC, and we have about 35 repositories of curriculum for different lesson plans there. So a lot of good content that you can access. And all the stuff that Jim Tannenbaum is doing is also in that system. Okay. So let's start out with our agenda here. So what I want to start out with is a short discussion of ethics. There's so many things about AI and bias and things like that. This is an incredibly powerful tool. But I want everybody to be conscious about the fact that you're going to be making ethical decisions about when to use this. And we're going to go through some quick stories about when it's appropriate and when it might not be appropriate. When we're just going to then describe what ChatGPT is, and I apologize, I'm a computer scientist. I teach artificial intelligence every day, and so I love this topic, and I often use terms that might not be familiar, so just stop me and ask questions in the chat, and I'll try to answer those. Then we're going to go through examples of using ChatGPT and generating lesson plans, generating quizzes, generating sample code, interactive hands-on labs that kids can interact with directly. And then I'm going to go through one of my favorite examples is if you're trying to get maybe high school students interested in AI, making predictions, the gateway to that is this little explanation of what is linear regression. If you haven't studied that, we'll give you some examples and maybe get you to see how we can use ChatGPT to generate lesson plans for that. I love to use ChatGPT to generate stories, to do metaphor learning using analogies. All of those things are just really fun to do. Then we're going to do some future direction and then a little wrap up, a little discussion of a little bit more discussion of ethics here. All right, so a couple things. Content is all accessible to everybody. There's no charge for using any of this. It's all licensed under Creative Commons. We want you to extend it. We want you to give us feedback so we can make better content. And the only constraint is we don't want you to charge or resell this content. So just a couple things. We started building out some of our online content during COVID, where we stopped having our in-person things. And we said, we really need to focus on building really good curriculum online and make sure it's engaging. How do we keep track of our students' attention and make sure their attention is consistent and things? So we've done all these things, building what we call journey maps and things. So what we're going to do is walk you through some ways that we've used ChatGPT to generate lesson plans and to extend it. And then the funnest thing is, if you haven't seen some of this, we designed what we call our low-cost robot kits. And this is just one that Jim and I have been working on. And you can see that we have a nice little display and a lot of fun things. So this is what we call the funnest vehicle for teaching computational thinking. This version is $19. And so that's a lot of what we do, is getting this into the classroom and making it fun. My personal goal is to build community here. And I would love it if everybody would go out to LinkedIn and connect with me and let me know what the challenges you're having in the classroom and how we can create curriculum and training to make your life as a teacher easier and specifically more fun. Many of the case studies and stories people have online are saying ChatGPT really is making it fun. A big article in the New York Times yesterday about how people are really having fun with this stuff. One of the fun things about this is once we put our curriculum online, I found out that just adding 4 lines of code to a config file, we can do Google Analytics on all of our microsites. So we didn't realize how many people were coming to these sites, and we thought it was mostly Minnesota, but it turned out that was not the case. We're having just this one site, the MicroPython site. We're now having students from all over the world, over 10,000 visits in the last 90 days. So one thing about this is it's moving very, very quickly. I did this blog in January of 2021, and that was the first time I used GPT-3. It wasn't ChatGPT, it was an older version, to do 6 things that I thought teachers were interested in doing. And it did okay on 3 or 4 of them. And there were some gaps, but what's amazing is when ChatGPT was introduced in November of last year, it's getting almost all A's. It still struggles generating multiple choice quizzes. That's a pretty hard thing to do linguistically, but it's getting better, and now GPT-4 is out, and that's going to be even another threshold. So let's talk about ethics here. Most people, when calculators first came out, you might have remembered the controversy. If you're old enough to remember that is, a lot of teachers really objected to calculators. They refused to let students bring calculators into the classroom. They had to sign a note saying they weren't using calculators to do their homework. But eventually we settled in and we figured out a way to teach students the basics of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division and still be able to use their calculators in the classrooms. And today, most people know that email is essential for our productivity. We don't do a lot of handwritten notes. And this is just an example of how we are constantly pushing the envelope of when technology is appropriate to be used in classroom. And I'm not saying there's any one answer here, but I want everybody to be thoughtful about using these powerful new tools and your role in disclosure of when we're using these tools to generate lesson plans, to generate letters. A lot of people are using this to automate letters that they're generating to parents at home. And all of those things are things that we want you to think about carefully. We should also think about working with peers. And most importantly, I mentioned my job is to connect with other people. We never want you to use these tools as a replacement for connecting with other people that are also enthusiastic about generating these lesson plans. So, all right, so let's now just go into what exactly is ChatGPT. Well, it is the tool for generating text. Came out in November of last year, November 30th. And within 2 months, they reached 100 million users, 2 months. So it's by far the fastest growing application in any technology out there. What it really is, it's a way, it's called the field of AI called generative AI. And generative AI is all about when we can describe something in English, we call that the prompt. Can we send it to a thing, give it instructions, and have us generate something? This includes not just text to lesson plans, but it also includes areas like text to images, text to generating software, the impressive GitHub Copilot, which is projected to save hundreds of millions of dollars just for the company I work with a year. And also interactive graphics too, diagrams, architecture diagrams, database diagrams, all of those things can be done. Idea here is in this class, we're going to just go through what is prompts. We're going to see what some sample prompts are. We're going to see some sample formats. We're going to try to describe what our audience is in these prompts, create a lesson plan for a 5th grade classroom. We're going to talk about the style and the details you want in those prompts. And then we're going to also talk about the different styles of things you can generate. So what is a large language model? Really quick. It is simply a tool, in this case, for taking a set of inputs. We convert all these words into a series of numbers. They're called tokens. We run it through this huge, massive 175 billion neural network. And all it does is predict the next word or the next token. That's all it does. It's not a rules engine. It's not perfect. It makes lots and lots of errors, but it's also incredibly productive. It can really help your productivity. Now, whose job is it to make sure that when you generate something, it's correct? And that's your job. We call this human in the loop. We never want to, in the current technology, automatically generate letters with these tools without a human being previewing it, because you never know what's called, it goes off the rails, especially in longer things, and it generates what is often called hallucinations, which is it generates text that doesn't make any sense. So you have to be aware of that. Keep your prompts relatively small. If you're generating code that's over 50 lines, it may get not as good towards the end, but it is amazing as far as its productivity gains. One of the key things that's different about ChatGPT from all the other things is its ability to get high quality output. And the way they did that is they showed sample output to human beings that are watching and looking at A, B, C versions, and they would then rank which ones is the best. And once they start to rank those things, they got better and better at results. They use that knowledge to make even better things for that. Question that I just saw, is the slide deck available? Yes, it is. If you go to the microsite, there's a thing called slides, and you can download all those slides from there too. Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate that. All right, so it's really revolutionary. They're using human feedback. It's not just a machine generating this network, it's people refining the network, what's called fine tuning. And that's really a very expensive process. It costs them hundreds of millions of dollars, and it seems to work quite well. All right, so the one question is ChatGPT intelligent? So intelligence is hard to measure. A lot of people says ChatGPT could do simple reasoning, solve problems, think abstractly, comprehend ideas. But what they often said is it's not good at planning, and it wasn't good at learning from new experiences. And what we're seeing in the last couple of weeks with this new Auto GPT is it is good at generating a sequence of tasks that need to be done, and it is good at executing those things. Is that actually planning? Not really, but it is about creating lists of tasks in the future. And we're starting to see more of those things happen. So slowly, every couple of weeks, we're seeing more and more of the barriers for these tools get broken down. All right, so the pros here. It's very easy for people to do these tasks and help semi-automate their lesson plans creation. I love it because I know ChatGPT is always going to be available to help me solve these problems. The helper is always there. It gives me this safety net, this security zone. The challenge is that there's no real easy way to tell when it's generating correct information and when it's not. Verification can take time. And it's also only annual updates or so. Actually, in this one, it's almost 2 years, because the models are so big, takes tens of millions of dollars to build. It doesn't really work on current events, and languages that have only been around for the last 2 years, or libraries, it doesn't do well on. And so they're trying to optimize some of that stuff. All right, just from the New York Times yesterday, some quotes. It's like collaborating with an alien. Everything becomes easier. It feels like I've hired an intern to help me do the simple things. It used to take me half an hour to write things, and now it takes only a minute. It's enormously fun, right? So those are some of the things that we're starting to see. So I asked, what are the key concepts? I had a timeout there, and I'm gonna just go back and take this and see if I can get this new chat working and refresh the screen. And then I'm just gonna paste my prompt in here. What are the key concepts in teaching computational thinking? Yep, so it's looks like the server might be down.
Try hitting refresh, Dan. Sometimes that'll.
Yep, I have seen that happen, and you guys are probably a little bit more things. So yeah, so it looks like the server's down. We'll come back and try that. I have all the responses. Is anybody else getting theirs to work? Anyway, well, what I'll do is I'll copy these prompts into the chat, and then you can copy them out of the chat and try it in yours if it comes up. Right. So what's interesting is it starts to generate some lists of things. And we've been talking about what is computational thinking, and you'll notice that the first three, decomposition, abstraction, pattern recognition, are always in the first top list of these things. Algorithmic thinking and debugging is very frequently. And then as you go down 6, 7, and 8, maybe not so much, right? Maybe this is something that they've inferred. Maybe some people have written papers on this, but these later things are not always part of what is computational thinking. It's not an exact definition. So you can often see that these things really help you start to come up with what should I be covering, and how should I tie my lessons plans together. And we have some really good examples of that. This is actually the full response that I get. It gives you, this is often called a template. So a template is when they return some content, they know that when you say, give me a list of topics, they return a list. They often put the name of the topic in a bold, and then they give you some text after that. And so it often returns kind of what's almost like a formulaic response, which is why it's very easy to detect these things if students are using it inappropriately, because it follows such a simple formula. But those are some of the things you can start to do and generate some ideas, and then reflect on this, and then maybe edit it. Maybe you're going to only pick the first 3 or 4, and then there are others you might cherry pick on whether it makes sense for you. And one of the other things I love to do is start to get people involved in generating stuff. So one of the ideas we have is, what if instead of just saying, here's your code of conduct class, ask them to all go into ChatGPT and put in, create a code of conduct for a junior high school classroom, include topics of values, diversity, and respect, and return the results in, we use what's called a markdown format. Markdown is just a specific way where you can just copy and paste, and it will retain the headers, the bold, the italics, the links, and things like that. If you go and look at some of our lesson plans, you can see that these generate some very interesting results. So here's some of our basic prompts, and here is, let's see, code of conduct. So here's some of the sample text you can put in there, and you can start to see that you can then create variations of this. And this can be changed for age appropriateness, right? Maybe you're going to create a junior high version, or one for a group of seniors in a classroom, and you might want to tweak some of the things for certain things. So there's all sorts of interesting ideas here, and this is ideas is bring your classroom into this, and then the questions is, if students are having AI generate their things, will they adhere to it more? If they know that this is a standard, it's not just one person's ideas. And so there's all sorts of really good ways to get collaboration going. All right, so this is just a little bit of some of the summary responses that we've seen from these things. So one of the things that it is also very good is, say you're putting some of your lesson plans online and you want to make sure that it's used appropriately. So you might say, I'm a teacher, I'm creating new lesson plans. I want other teachers to be able to reuse my content and modify it for their classrooms, but I don't want to give them permission to take my materials and resell it or charge their students for it, right? And so what license should you pick? And when you do this prompt, the response comes back right away. You should pick Creative Commons attributions, non-commercial, share alike 4.0 international would be the best option. And so you'll notice that that's the exact license that's on all of our Coder Dojo sites. Jim uses that. It's on the footer of all our pages. So it's really good for taking a descriptive text and matching it to a sample legal contract. All right, so now let's go into lesson plan prompts. So lesson plans are kind of the first thing that we think of that take a lot of time, very tedious. And what's further, if you have variations in your classroom, maybe one lesson plan doesn't fit everybody. Maybe there's some people who really have a handle on the math background and some students that are still struggling. So the classic prompt is design a lesson plan about a topic A with B goals, accommodations, and a D as a time limit. And then finally do some differentiation, accommodating students with special needs. And one of the people that was commenting on the ChatGPT as a teacher said, this is just a perfect use case. It generated in 30 seconds what normally would take them hours to do. And what it did is they proofread it, they checked it, they maybe removed some things, added some things, and they found that it just allowed them to focus on spending more time with the kids and understanding the material so that the kids can get more out of it rather than writing up these detailed lesson plans. Here is a real classic one where we actually ask ChatGPT or your large language model. Google will be having one called Bard coming out. Amazon has one coming out also. And you say, you want that actor, that large language model, to take the position that they are a lesson plan generator and they're working with students that are learning in English. And then you say, I will provide you a topic and a level of difficulty, and then you will create for me a detailed step-by-step lesson plan on that topic that should include, what are you going to include? You're going to have objectives, what materials you need, activities, exercises, and a conclusion. And make sure to include tips for engaging students and assessing their understanding, right? How do you get more hands-on things? So that's a good template that we've seen out there, and it's very, very effective. So now I'm just going to walk you through some of the ones that we've built and then kind of show you how we've tweaked the prompts to get exactly what we want. When you first start out, you're always going to start out with a short prompt and you're going to see some results and it may not be what you want. So now the art of prompt design, which is a new field of computer science called prompt engineering, right? We used to have software engineering, but now we are working hand in hand with these large language models. And it's our job to create instructions in clear instructions with enough context and enough precision using precise words so that we get what we want out of these language models. And this is not something you're going to learn overnight. You need to try it, you need to practice. And the good news is that ChatGPT is free right now. It's not often slow. There's a paid version that's $20 a month that gives you a little bit better response time. But you'll find that it is very, very useful. And I think most people that use it, after they practice it for a while, they get better and better. So in this one, we said, create a detailed lesson plans for teaching loops in Python for junior high school students about 12 years old, which is our target audience in a lot of our classrooms and Coder Dojo. Assume student already had basic introduction to Python and has lessons on syntax and conditions. right? Generate sample Python code with Markdown, and that's a standard we'll show you, that include an input list of colors and show how to loop through those lists of colors. Right? So that's maybe something you've done in the past, and you have some ideas, or you might just have it generate everything. So here's the sample response. It comes up with objectives, materials, an introduction, verbal description, what is a loop, and then it generates sample code, right? So and when I paste this code into our microsite tools, it does all the nice things that you'd expect. It generates line numbers on the left. We have this nice little copy text button on the right, and the students literally will take this code and they can copy it into Trinket or their Python development shell or their integrated development environment. We use Thonny in a lot of our classrooms. For a lot of our Raspberry Pi Picos, we use Thonny. And so it's really good at starting out and generating simple things. All right, so this is really what it looks like in the user interface when you start to do this. And this one, I'm going to just go back and try this one more time. Create a Python programming using the Turtle graphics library to draw a square, right? And this is what it creates. It says we're going to import something, we're going to create the object, and we're going to create a for loop, and we're going to repeat it 4 times, go forward 100 pixels, and then turn right, and then repeat that over and over. And what I like to do is, let's just see if our ChatGPT is up here. No, it doesn't look like it is happening. I might have to go and show you some of the other stuff. So let's just go into Trinket here. And so we can take all of our sample code, go into, this is Trinket. We use this for a lot of ours because it's really easy for you to create new ones. You can say, I'm going to create a new program, and you just paste this code. Whoops, let me just grab this. The sample code from the Trinket area here, and I'll paste this one in. And so here's a sample, and then we just click the run button, and we can see it generating the square. Okay. And this is really a great way to get started, especially for kids that have never done any programming. They don't really understand syntax and things. And this is really just a way for them to get started using experiments, right? So we set up some experiments. What happens if we change this number from 100 down to half that value, which is 50? And rerun this, and let's look at what happens. The square gets much smaller, right? So we just encourage them to start simple, have simple programs, and then we slowly build up and add more context. All right. So here's a really fun one. We always try to get color and motion into these labs. Kids love that feeling of being able to control color and motion. And this one is generate a sample Python program using Turtle library that will draw 7 boxes filled with colors of the rainbow. Now, when we first do that, it may generate some code that doesn't quite place the boxes correct. It might be stacked on top of each other, they might be too big, too small. So we add a few extra things. We wanted to start just to the left of the Cartesian coordinates, 200, negative 200 and 0, and make the boxes 50 on each side, space the boxes 55 apart, and don't bother with the setup in screen size. That's all done for you. So these are kind of prompt refinements. And then when we go and I'll bring this one up and show a little bit about what it looks like in the curriculum pages we generated. So this is the Rainbow Boxes lab. You can see this code. And then you can see some of these things, and then you can copy that code into, so there's a little copy box here. I'll go back into Trinket and create a new Trinket here in Python and just paste that in. And then do a run. And then we see it starting to create these boxes, okay? So I didn't have to know much about Python to generate this lesson plan, right? Now, it's good if you know a little bit of Python. It's good if you feel comfortable reading the code, because then you can ask the kids, what would happen if I changed this last word to be pink, right? And then rerun it, right, instead of violet. And then ask them to make some changes. What are your favorite colors? How would you go about changing some of these things? What if you wanted to change the shape or the number of sides, right? Make different polygons, generalize it. Those are all little things that you can do. But what I want to give everybody the feeling is, you don't have to be an expert at Python because ChatGPT will generate the template for you. It may not be perfect. You may have to fix a few things, like move things around and change spacing. But if you can read the code, my guess is you'll be able to get your kids through this and they will have a lot of fun. And you can start to teach computational thinking, even though you're not an expert on the syntax of Python. So that's just, we've seen this happen over and over in the mentoring stuff that we've done. So I hope that you give this a try and integrate some of these things. All right, what else? Another thing it's really good at is when you see a group of students that all seem to have the same problems, you might ask ChatGPT, what are the most common ways that high school students that are studying computer science or computation misunderstand concept X, whatever that concept is. And can you briefly explain to these students why they might not understand it, and then how to give corrections so that they do this. And a lot of this is through metaphors and storytelling and other ways. And ChatGPT is wonderful at generating these stories and metaphors. It's just amazing. So here's one. I'll list the most common ways that high school students misunderstand the concept of object-oriented programming, one of the hardest things for kids to grasp. And for each one, explain why these students think incorrectly and then give them an understanding. Confusing classes and objects or instances of objects, inheritance, all these things. So this is a really good way to narrow it in and then come up with stories and metaphors and example programs to clarify misunderstandings. And ChatGPT just does a really good one. Creating charts is another thing. Data literacy, a big topic. And then what we're going to start to do is we're going to get out of just generating simple Python and Trinket. Although Trinket, by the way, has amazing things. It supports matplotlib. You can do trigonometry and sines and cosines and things like that. So don't underestimate the power of Trinket. Lots of libraries, and these libraries often aren't documented well in Trinket, but they do have capabilities in there. And one of the things I often have it do is write a prompt that generates a Python program that does graphics or charts. So here's a prompt: create a Python plotly program to draw a vertical bar chart showing the area of all the continents, right? Now, you need to do some homework before you run this lab. You'll have to get the student's desktop set up, right? They might have to get, I use a program called Visual Studio Code, and that has to be set up, and you have to add the library. So you're gonna have to do a little homework to make sure these desktop tools are configured. Use as much as Trinket as you can, because there's no impact on the desktop. that you don't have to have special permissions to install any software. It's all done through the web. But it's amazing how good it is at doing the basic data visualization tools. And we have lots of labs online that walk you through this to show the different ways to do it. The key is you have to Google, how do I set up and configure Python with Plotly? And by the way, Plotly is kind of one of the most common plotting libraries within Python. There are over 36,000 libraries in Python, right? It's the largest language, the one that the kids want to learn because all of their friends are learning it. There's the most example code out there. And ChatGPT is really good at generating Python because there's so much sample programs out there to learn. And so I know that because I've been doing Python for a while, that Plotly is a really good way to do it. And I know all the tools in the desktop are configured. Sometimes ChatGPT brings in older libraries that are not working anymore. So that's one thing you have to just be aware of. The more old code out there, the higher the chance ChatGPT might bring in those old libraries. So you have to often specify the latest libraries to get the latest stuff. All right, so now let's talk about how to make these labs more exciting, more interactive hands-on labs. And what I want everybody to do is, I have a sample here. We call it the slope and intercept lab. And I'm just gonna go and paste this in. I'll put it also in the chat. Let's see, just see if I can find this. And this is a lab that where when students are just learning the basics of interactive things, what you can do is we can create a prompt that just says, create an interactive thing that when we move a slider, it's going to change the slope of a line, right? So here's a little tiny, it uses JavaScript and a little bit of graphics. And as you move the slider, it changes the slope of the line. This entire program, if I look at the source, is not very big. It's about 34 lines. And it was completely generated by ChatGPT. All I had to do was specify a prompt, and it starts to build these things. And then what I also want to do is just walk you through some of the, and it's not very pretty, it doesn't have labels, maybe the ranges aren't correct, but we then can give you, I'll put this one in the chat also so that you can try this one out. Here's one that's a little bit nicer, but ChatGPT couldn't generate this entire thing. It has a little bit more things. It has a grid in the background. It has some interactivity where the slope is reflected here and the intercept of this. And if you do a view source on this, you'll see that it's not just about 30 lines. This one is almost 118 lines. And this is where ChatGPT kind of falls apart. It doesn't really do well after about 50 lines. It can kind of guess it. So what we had to do was break it up into 3 small pieces, generate a grid, generate things that generates these interactive sliders, and then generate the code that draws the line, right? But this, I think that these programs are just so much more fun, more interactive. You can give them assignments. What happens when the intercept is about 100 here and the slope is 3/4? How do you change the slope to go to the upper right-hand corner? There's all sorts of interactive labs and things. And most importantly, the tools are getting better all the time. You can often start with an existing program and say, modify this program to add these controls or add these things, and you can then get much better results. So ChatGPT can really help you build more interactive labs. All right, so got about 9 more minutes left. Just want to let you know, my job where I work is to teach people about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, a lot of that is machine learning, and a lot of that is, given some data, can we create a function an algorithm or something that will predict the future. And one of the most common is, what if we got some points in our neighborhood that have the sales of homes, and for each of those homes, it gave us roughly the square footage and what the sale price was, right? What if we plotted them on a line or on a graph and then tried to draw a line through them, then given any other home that's going to go up for sale, and we know what its square footage, we could put that on this line, and it will then, we could read back what we think the price of that home might be. And that's the basics of prediction. This is a simple linear relationship. There's no complex curves in this wave. But one of the things we're trying to do is get students to visualize this data and this abstraction using these tools. And I mentioned the slope lab. That's often a good way to get started. And then what we can start to do then is go through and see that what we want to do is plot these things, and we want to do what's called a least squares fit. And so what I'm going to do is just show you how we automatically draw a line through a set of points. And I'll put this in the chat too. You can try this yourselves. And then every time we refresh it, it's going to generate a bunch of points, and it's going to then try to draw a line through those by minimizing the distance between these points and the line. So now, actually, what we want to do is really draw those lines. And then once we draw those lines, we can see that if we turn those lines into a square and minimize the area of those squares, that we understand what we mean by least squares, right? The least amount of area in the squares that are created by the lines between these things. And then we can add some interactive controls, and we can try to get people to minimize these things by adjusting the slope and the intercept to match those lines. All right, so that's where we're starting to really give interactive things, and we're gonna be not generating perfect code, and we have to tweak those things, but then we can go back and have it generate lesson plans and interact with those interactive programs. And by the way, I know there are tons of other libraries out there. There's tons of material you can purchase. There's everything that Mathematica does for doing all these visualization. But there's one thing about this that I think is different today with ChatGPT, and that is you can customize these lesson plans to your audience, to your group, to your situation, and make it fun and make it interactive and generate the code that you're going to have fun with. Okay, so then I'll wrap up. Just remember, ChatGPT is a language model. And by language, it does so many wonderful things about generating descriptive text. Remember, you can always say, explain a subject so a fifth grader can understand it. Use storytelling. Create a dialogue between two characters, and one character doesn't understand a slope and intercept, and the other character is going to understand it and try to explain it. Have it build some rhyming poems to explain concepts, or have the students try to come up with a tool, and by rhyming they might remember it a little bit better. So those are all fun techniques that I think you can do. All right, so wrapping up, let's just talk a little bit about the future of what's going to be happening here. The rate of change is accelerating. I started to teach these generative things almost three and a half years ago, and I was having so much difficulty getting people to adapt these ideas and integrate them in. And now it's just overwhelming. I have executives filling my inbox with questions of how do we integrate this into our training, our curriculum, our learning, our software development. And there are now over 1,000 systems on Hugging Face that are generating not just text, but images and diagrams. I only went through a fraction of the things that are on the website. Just in the last 3 weeks, LangChain has become this way of integrating these models in a chain of commands, and then AutoGPT, where you're getting these agents to talk to each other in English to ask each other for services. And that's also just mind-blowing about the demonstrations that we're seeing. So I think when we look back on this, we're going to see late 2022 and this year as what we call the generative turn, where generating content becomes a major powerhouse in our ability to generate content that's tuned to the needs of our students. And I'm hoping that you see the potential here and you try this out and you share these ideas with your peers and come up with ways to work together. And certainly reach out to Jim and myself if you have any ideas about what you'd like to put in your classroom. In the next few years, I think we're going to do something like this. And once again, remember I said so far, it's always human in the loop. Now what we're seeing is the quality is going up and up and up, where we have 99.99% confidence that the content will be correct. And here's a lesson, a sample prompt. Create a lesson plan for each of my students on linear regression. Adjust the complexity of the lesson to how students did in the prior quiz. Send the lessons out via email with a return deadline of tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Generate multiple choice quiz adjusted to each lesson. It doesn't do that very well today, by the way. Send the quiz out on the following day at 8 a.m. Have the results going into our learning management system. A lot of people don't have learning management systems, but hopefully we'll have more of those. And they'll be lower cost, and the quizzes will be secure, and only the right people will be able to have the access to that. And then you say, analyze the results and send the results to my email, right? That's what people are working on today, to get these chains of little things all working. And this is, I think, going to really relieve the burden and allow us to spend more quality time with our students. So I'm wrapping up with some other final ethical questions. When is it appropriate to automate these things? How can these tools allow us to spend more quality time with our students? When is it appropriate for us to disclose that we're using these tools? And how do we know whether there's bias in them, right? It's a huge issue. We have entire blogs and sections about bias and how to find that and detect that to make sure all of our kids are getting the same thing. And then most importantly, when are we going to start to regulate this? Because regulators tend to be about 2 years behind. And we need some of this regulation now. Okay, that is all I have. I think you probably got that. I think that generative AI can be a force multiplier in the classroom. Less stress, more fun,
Don't
easy
touch
to see,
nothing.
and try to always verify that content is correct and have fun. All right, so